Okay, hello everybody. This is Mark Vogt, and this is the ChicagoLand SharePoint Users Group, the May 17th session in 2017. Welcome. We've got more than a dozen people. I think we got 14 or 15 people that have already RSVP'd, and maybe a couple more typically come at the last second. So, welcome. There is a lot to cover. It is going to be a very intense session. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing anything informal before we jump right in. So, we've got 11 people already coming on board, and they're coming on in droves. Here goes. Our agenda for today is big picture stuff, very briefly, recent news from around the SharePoint ecosystem, upcoming events to keep things on your radar, cool new stuff, and that's where all the focus is today on SharePoint framework stuff from both myself and from Ralph Ribas of Magenic that is going to do some additional stuff related to CDM. Again, as time permits, we have Bring Your Own Problem, where we share and tackle real world problems. Chances are it's not going to happen today. There's just so much to get done. Big picture stuff. Remember, everybody, there are 4 stages of collaboration maturity. There's 1, communicating, 2, sharing, 3, tasking, 4, tracking. Even at yesterday's SharePoint Summit, we saw Microsoft putting a huge emphasis on the world of sharing to get to the point where organizations have made that organic. You need to understand, as one of the SharePoint people in your organization, you need to try to understand where your organization is at on this path to maturity. Mostly, you're going to be somewhere between sharing and tasking, but we need to start working towards getting people up to tasking. Tasking and tracking is where you really start delivering your return on your investments for SharePoint. Everything else can be done with other tools, file servers, email, you name it. Understand where you are, then aim for the next level is the name of the game there. Upcoming events in May. We've got today's sessions, the ChicagoLand SharePoint Users Group session. We had the virtual summit yesterday, and we'll talk a minute about that. Actually turned out to be a very successful venture. This Saturday, May 20th, in the Chicago suburbs, for no charge, is SharePoint Saturday. This is the 4th event in the last handful of years. Been very successful, more successful every single year. That's something that you want to attend, even if it's just for the morning. You don't have to stay there all day, but you will derive something from it. Other events by other known members. If you have other events, feel free to chat them up and share them with the group. I see June 1st is the next Office 365 adoption session is coming in, so keep that in mind, everybody. I was asked to offer up a job opening. There's a position for a contract SharePoint developer. It's downtown 2 years. There's some telecommuting. Talk to Jesse Martin at aerosolutionsgroup.com. You guys, it's okay for you to share stuff like that. It's a SharePoint users group session. That kind of network actually happens in a session. So even if it's virtual, we're still going to do it. We're still going to try to tackle that kind of, provide that kind of functionality. Here's Mark's take on yesterday's SharePoint virtual summit. I've got likes, I've got dislikes. There was basically a lot of cool stuff. MAD storage capability is now available in OneDrive. MAD storage capability is now available in Office 365 itself. I heard them talk about 25 terabytes worth of storage. Microsoft is gunning to be a big data repository. So watch for more development in that area. In fact, they have a Windows Explorer-based UI into OneDrive. So you don't even need to use a browser or anything like that, even for files that are not synchronized. That was an impressive takeaway for me because I'm constantly comparing OneDrive to some of its other known competitors. Microsoft mentioned increasing user adoption of Office 365. They got over 250,000 active organizations worldwide, over 100 million active users on a monthly basis. That's an impressive number. There's now a seamless integration that they're striving for between SharePoint websites, this thing called Office 365 Groups, and Microsoft Teams. They're looking to try to solve that sharing puzzle to make collaboration seamless so they can take the next step after that. They had something that really caught my eye, and I was talking to my colleagues about this, communication sites, or another way to put it, SharePoint beats WordPress at doing WordPress. Imagine being able to blast out something that looked like a WordPress site in the time it takes to do a WordPress site, but you did it with SharePoint, so now you've dovetailed in all the functionality and the collaboration functionality of SharePoint. But that is what communication sites are. They're not out now, as I understand it, but they're coming out shortly, and they are going to be something. We're going to be very pleased to be building communication sites. They've also got websites, web pages are now responsive, and mobile out of the box. And it's looking really good. They perfected that. It's looking so good inside all of the demos that they were giving yesterday. Microsoft Teams, Ralph's going to talk about this even a little bit. This is going to be huge. This is a new tool that fits somewhere between Skype and Yammer that allows you to do real-time collaboration ad hoc with small groups of teams. But the user interface that they achieved is really something. It feels very seamless, like they're literally in the same room. We're going to be watching and doing a demo of that in the next session of ChicagoLand SharePoint Users Group. Microsoft Graph continues to evolve and grow into a single unified API for literally doing anything related to the cloud. We knew this was happening. We got to see them talk more about their commitment to the Microsoft Graph. Maybe they can come up with a better term for it because I find it confusing. Just call it Unified API. It would have been great. Dislikes, the SharePoint team over there still seems a little stuck on the notion that collaboration is only about sharing. We need to get beyond that and get to tasking and get to tracking where dashboards are built, stuff like that. I think this is the year that's going to happen. The demos all tended to be focused on ad hoc meeting types of collaboration, when really the more important collaboration in most organizations is going to be on processes that people are all working on in unison and on projects that they're all collaborating on. That's where you can actually measure changes in improvements in your productivity. Ad hoc meetings, much harder to do, but processes, project-related collaboration, you can actually measure success and quantify it. That's where I think the focus needs to be on any upcoming demos that they're going to do. No more ad hoc meetings, stuff like that. So that was my takeaway for the virtual summit. So let's continue a little bit. Michael, it's time to, I see he's logged on. Michael Blumenthal has a slot for the next couple of minutes to talk about everything related to Office 365. Mike, I'm going to change presenters over to you.
Great, thank you. Let me share my screen. Come on here. There we go. So welcome everyone. So I had the pleasure of attending the SharePoint Virtual Summit yesterday, as well as catching abbreviated bits of the Build conference the previous week. And I've got just a couple slides here of some of the highlights that I think everybody should know about. So let's start with, and let me verbally just confirm that, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So starting from Build, I'm just going to touch on PowerPoint power-ups briefly. One of the things that they've demonstrated Build, which I think is a potential for a great, maybe, I'm not sure if calling it a productivity win is the right term, but it's certainly a communication win, which is the ability to have Microsoft's machine learning capabilities on the fly translate a presentation that you're doing. So for example, obviously I'm giving this presentation in English. If we were running this translation add-in, we could have a live subtitles in another language such as Spanish happening while I'm talking. And the demo that they did at Build was showing a woman presenting a slide deck, and she was speaking in Spanish. English subtitles were appearing as she spoke, and a gentleman in the audience then asked her a question through his phone in Mandarin, and it was translated into Spanish or into English for her to respond to. So that's pretty impressive and makes the ability to present content in one language and have it consumed in any language, it now opens up this world of possibilities for efficient communication that way. That add-in is only in preview right now, where you have to sign up for it. And in fact, I don't even think the preview's actually started, but they announced that at Build. Then also, in about the same time, I became aware of this other ad, and I don't remember if this came from Build or not, but it's this Pixton add-in for PowerPoint, which lets you add comic-style characters to your presentations. And your mileage may vary, but I'm trying it out here. So moving on to SharePoint Virtual Summit, and my Office 365 Adoption User Group organized a viewing party yesterday, and we had we watched the event and then had a brief discussion on it. But some of the highlights of the things they announced are as follows. First of all, one of the big themes was sharing with confidence, and they announced that the following OneDrive for Business enhancements. In the OneDrive for Business Sync client in Windows 7 and Windows 10, strangely no mention of Windows 8, but also in the Mac Finder, the Finder on the Macintosh, and the OneDrive for Business web experience, the SharePoint document library experience, sharing would have a cleaner, clearer user experience. So here you can see an example of that where you want to create a sharing link for a document, and you can choose, is this link going to work for anyone? Is it only going to work for people in my company? Is it only going to work for specific people? Whether or not whether it's a view link or an edit link, and then you can also set an expiration. So that's a screenshot of the new UI that will be coming soon. The other big thing they announced on OneDrive for Business arena is files on demand. And this is essentially the return of placeholders. For any of you who remember what that was like, it's the idea that you can have basically a stub or representation of all your files on your in your file manager view on your machine, even if the files don't actually live there. So it's essentially this idea of stubs, but it's implemented better, and was implemented as the teams behind the scene implementing it were not just the OneDrive for Business team, but also the Windows File Explorer team. And so you have now a better experience around being able to have all of your files from OneDrive represented on your local machine, and then you can choose which ones are actually coming down or available locally. So if you have, say, terabytes of content in your OneDrive for Business and a 250 gig SSD on your laptop, you can pick and choose file by file which files you actually want to have available, but you can still see all of your files. So that new experience is coming this summer. Moving on to the IT Pro side of things, they've announced a new user experience for the SharePoint Admin Center, which I am very excited about, being a SharePoint admin in my day job. They also announced more sharing controls in the OneDrive for Business admin. That is, the OneDrive Admin Center is its own site, is admin.onedrive.com. They announced that they'll have easy UI for connecting existing team sites to groups. They also announced if you're particularly worried about encryption, you can bring your own encryption keys, and they'll use the keys you provide to encrypt your data in your tenant. And also getting more granular with conditional access policies, where they can do conditional access policies per site instead of per tenant. So that's some of the IT Pro enhancements they've announced. And they also had, I thought, an interesting expansion of their vision of SharePoint being the place that people go to work, where you've got your collaboration sites, you have your teams, you have your collaboration sites, you have your communication sites, and you have your business applications. And they made a number of announcements about Power Apps, Flow, and Power BI, and they really sort of treated this as a related combination, where I hadn't really thought of Power BI being related to Power Apps and Flow. And they announced that you'll be able to use Power Apps to create custom list views, and again, more improvements in Flow and using Flow for workflow. But they also announced that there will be an out-of-the-box approval workflow coming this summer as well.
Cool.
And then one of the big announcements that Mark, you mentioned, the communication sites. So I see this as the future of publishing sites has finally arrived. The comparison to WordPress is certainly accurate. This is modern, beautiful web pages. If you've played around with the modern beautiful pages in the existing team sites, the new modern team sites or the group sites, you'll see that they had until recently, or until this announcement, been confined to one column layouts. And with this announcement, they're announcing that multi-column, or at least 2-column layouts are arriving will be available for building pages. And interestingly, the provisioning experience for the end user is similar, where anyone can go to the SharePoint homepage, create a site, and be asked whether they want a group, essentially with it, whether they want a team site with as a part of a group, or just the communication site. And the communication site then does not get a group associated with it because that's not really part of the use case. And so they showed some UI for how that experience is going to be surfaced. But the key points here are communication sites are your tool for that employer to employee publishing scenario, and they've got the new layout options, and they'll have more web parts available. And it was hard to get excited about new web parts when it felt like those web parts should have been there already, but it's good to see that they're actually coming. And they were mentioning Teams extensively, but also they're still fully behind Yammer. Yammer is not dead, and I think they emphasized how they distinguish between the two in terms of their use cases or purposes. Yammer is that wide, cross-organization, working out loud kind of discussion. Microsoft Teams is that narrow team, high-velocity chat that your team uses to get things done as they're racing toward deadlines. And that if you're going with the idea of the communication sites, employer to employee communication really should be bidirectional, and so you can build these communication sites and then surface Yammer groups in them for interactivity. And they also announced some improvements to search, and that the searches will help you find not just documents, but people as well.
Yeah, they made it sound like it was intelligent search too, that it's machine learning underneath. So you might ask for something, but it's going to give you what you asked for and then some based on who you are. It's going to be making selections about what it thinks you would want to know about. Very cool stuff.
Yeah, and some of that intelligence, in air quotes, was built in before, where they would take things into consideration like document author and relationship to you versus based on the organizational hierarchy. But yes, there's the implication here that artificial intelligence they're adding in artificial intelligence sort of pervasively through every product they can possibly add it to. So there's definitely that would be expected to be back there as well. And then these are just some of the highlights. And the Collab 365 community site has a nice live blog with sort of minute-by-minute tracking of all the top announcements and links to a lot of different articles. So I'm sharing that link. And then if you want to join my mailing list, where I will periodically advertise upcoming events, there's a short link for that. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Wow, perfect timing, Mike. Thanks for the great detail and the additional information about build. I think do you hand back to me, or do I take back the control?
I'm going to try stop sharing, and I think you can go from there.
Okay. All right, looks good. I'm going to try to, there we go. Now we're going to show the screen and pick up where we were a few minutes ago. Can somebody just echo back and tell me if you can see the slide deck?
Yep, yes we can.
Thanks. I'll go to full screen mode, and we're going to pick up. I have 20 minutes to try to race through 10 minutes, or I have 20 minutes to race through 30 minutes worth of stuff. What we promised you guys last month was we were going to dive more into the SharePoint framework. I told you specifically, bring your laptops to the session, because we are installing and explaining the entire SPFX tool chain. I'm going to be building a very basic Hello World part, not with everything, but what I am going to try to do is drive all the way to the end, where both the web part as an SPPKJ file and the static content is all hosted inside SharePoint, inside Office 365. Immediately I get done, I hand off to Ralph Rivas. We'll be stepping through another real world SPFX assignment, and he's going to be actually leveraging the Azure Content Delivery Network. So that's what we're going to do. Everybody get your laptops out and get ready to go, because this is what we're going to do. I'm going to close the Close the slide deck. I'm going to jump into the next one. We're going to look at the steps, and then we're going to perform the steps. Somebody echo back, please, that you can see the next slide presentation coming up. It's only 10 slides.
I can see it.
Okay, thanks. This is an end-to-end install to deploy of a basic web part up into a SharePoint library as the host for my content. Remember, we're talking about this brand new software framework. What is it? It's editors or IDEs. It's libraries, it's tools. It's this new term called scaffolding for an old term called project templates. It's being able to push things into production, and it's actually what they call workbenches, what previously used to be called emulators. The point is you get to actually do everything from a single local laptop. That's all that's required. You can even simulate SharePoint without actually having access to SharePoint. Wow. Microsoft casts all of this new tool chain with the following diagram you should get used to seeing. Sitting underneath everything is this thing called the Node.js server. It's just another runtime upon which all of the other tools run. Now, Adobe Air has been doing this for years. You have the Air engine running on your laptop. We have literally the .NET CLR, the Common Language Runtime, is sitting on our laptops, and everything else is driven by that. So this is not a new concept, except that Node.js is actually a JavaScript engine. So if you build tools that are all based on JavaScript, they can be run on top of Node.js, and you get this level of uniformity. The Node.js engine is different for each operating system, Mac, Windows, Linux. But once you've got Node.js running, everything else you put in there is exactly the same. So two people, one on a Mac, one on a Linux platform, or three people, one on a Windows platform, can all actually be working on the exact same code using the same tools, because the only thing that's different is that Node.js engine. We're going to install and configure all of these tools, and then we're going to get busy actually building a web part. Where do you find that SharePoint framework? Go to devoffice.com and go into SharePoint, and you're going to be able to start right there. Here, I've compressed what is several pages, what is actually several hours worth of videos, down to literally 3 slides. One slide is your development environment quick checklist. The other 2 slides is about building the web part in the checklist form. Here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to install Node.js, the latest long-term support version, by going to nodejs.org English and go and download it and install it. We're going to launch PowerShell after that. We're going to test that, whether or not we've got Node installed in what's called the Node Package Manager, a tool that's a part of that server. We're going to test that inside our machines. We're going to install Visual Studio Code. We're going to launch Visual Studio Code. We're going to actually open the integrated terminal that's a part of it and go from there. Using that, we're going to install what's called Yeoman. It's another tool called a task manager or a build manager. Gulp is another task manager, build manager as well. And finally, we're going to install a generator that came from Microsoft. It's another name for a project template. What kind of a project? A SharePoint framework web part project. And once we do these checklists, we will have an entire SPFX tool chain all ready to go. So I'm going to jump out of that. We're going to bring up a virtual machine. I'm going to log in. I'm going to get as far as I can in the time that's available to me. First thing we're going to do is actually, per that slide deck, let me squeeze this out of the way. First thing we want to do is go to nodejs.org/English and actually install node.js. So here I am. I'm going to I want you guys following along as best you can. There'll be a time when it actually will slow down a little bit. We got nodejs.org. This is what you're going to see. You're going to download the engine, this latest version, not the newest, but the latest long-term support version. I'm going to click on this and actually get a download. We're doing this literally in real time. Please feel free to follow along, even on your laptops. This is not a painful or a scary install that's going to leave your laptop in some kind of a weird state. It looks like the installation is finished downloading, so I'm going to run it. And I'm doing this completely for the very first time on this machine, guys. I've done it on a lot of other laptops, all my other work laptops. I'm doing it for the first time on this. So you are seeing the live experience. I'm accepting the terms of the agreement. We're going to go and put it into all the defaults. It's going to install the Node.js server. It's also going to install the tool called NPM, the Node Package Manager, which is a way of going and getting a bunch of pre-made modules of functionality from what is probably the largest package library on the planet Earth right now. And that's going to be a part of the development environment. In other words, you get pre-made building blocks that other people have built that get to go into your solutions. You don't have to write it from scratch. What does that mean? Rapid application development. We're literally installing Node.js as we speak. I'm watching my time. I'm at 12:26. Come on, Node.js. While that's starting, I'm going to go to the next one, and we're going to go and get code, which is code.visualstudio.com. And we're going to go and get Microsoft Code while that installation is actually happening. I'm just going to download it. I'm not going to start it yet. I'm going to download for Windows. Here's the latest stable build. And again, this is in our slide deck right here. So we're installing Node.js. We're getting Visual Studio Code ready to go. Let's go and get Visual Studio. Looks like it's still downloading. I'm going to go back to the Node.js. And it looks like Node.js Setup Wizard is completely done. So we've got the hard part done, Node.js. I'm going to click Finish and hope that it doesn't tell me to restart my server, because then I'm going to be embarrassed. We're going to go back and look for code, Visual Studio Code. Let's go get that installed as well. Here I am running the installer, and you can be doing this as well in real time. If you're having any kind of problems, feel free to use the chat tool. It's a users group session today, guys. It's not a webinar. So if you have questions, if you have comments, feel free to actually throw questions out. We're trying to get those solved. But I am trying to show you how straightforward it is to actually get this dev environment installed. I'm literally accepting all of the defaults, and we're letting Visual Studio Code.exe get installed on this server. It could be on your laptop. I'm choosing to put it on a virtual machine simply because I've already installed it on my laptop and I didn't want to uninstall everything just for the sake of the demo. This is just a Windows Server 2012 R2 dev box that has other stuff on, very few other things on here at all, actually. So now we're getting Visual Studio installed. While that's happening, let me go back and look at the presentation. We've installed Node.js. We're going to launch PowerShell. We're going to go do a quick test. But we can actually launch PowerShell from inside Visual Studio Code. That's one of the cool parts about it. And then we're actually going to use Visual Studio Code to actually finish installing the rest of our tool chain. Let's go see where we're at. Nearly done with Visual Studio Code. Come on. There's nothing else that I can actually install right now. Got 129 coming up on my 10-minute mark. There we go. We're going to launch Visual Studio Code. So far, so good. If we go back and look at our notes of this slide deck, the next thing we want to do is actually install Yeoman and install Gulp. This is just a test to see if it even existed. We would get back nothing if it hadn't been installed. Since Node and NPM were installed, we will get their version number. I'm going to skip that in the interest of time. We can see it in a moment. What I want to do next is actually use the integrated terminal to install the last two tools. We're going to go and open this up. We see that it's the version 1.12. Literally just happened, I think, yesterday. We're going to kill the welcome. We're not going to spend a lot of time trying to give you a tour of it. I'm going to go and bring up the integrated terminal, and we're going to just say, who am I? I'm Mark Vogt. What's my present working directory? I don't even have one listed here yet. Directories, fine. What I want to do next is install my last two tools. Those are going to take a very simple command from the command prompt. npm install -global of Yo or Yeoman. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to do npm. Well, let's just do a quick version first to see if everything's installed. I'm going to do a node -2 having trouble typing right now. Node got installed. So I'm actually wondering why that didn't come back. That's interesting. It did do the installation, and I don't think that I actually have to restart anything. Let me go see if I have to start the Node server. Yes, I do. So we're going to let Node.js actually get started. I think I'm good. I shouldn't have to do this part. I might have to actually do a restart so that it begins everybody. And I don't want to do that on this machine because it's a server and it's going to take excess time.
Mark, why don't you just open up a command line straight up? And then just type npm. It either works or it doesn't. Just go cmd with admin rights.
Sure.
You're in.
Oh, came back. All right. I don't know what the problem was. I didn't think I had to start npm first.
No, the problem is it's like a bit of a timing thing. It installed, but it wasn't ready yet. It was installing literally in the background when you had code finished before npm was ready.
I almost want to restart Visual Studio Code too.
Yes, you have to. Because that command line is now in a different mindset, so to speak.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Good catch, Ralph. Thanks. Let's see where we're at now. It's Node. There we go. npm.
And you probably want to install gulp and yeoman together. Just put yo and gulp at the end. Save some time.
Yeah, they're literally coming up next, Ralph. You're going to see me actually just separate them into two different commands. That's all. So we're going to do npm install global yo first. And then we're going to watch it. npm, then the package manager, you're going to go get the Yeoman task manager build tool that's a part of this new tool chain. And you guys can be following along and doing this on your laptops at the same time. There's no speeding this up. It's going to take as long as it takes, but this one's not bad. It's the generator that can sometimes take a bit of time.
Just as a quick note, on the command line, I could have put yo and gulp together at the same one. It'll go basically in sequence. I put yo first, yo installs, gulp next, installs next. He's just doing it separate lines so you guys get to see it.
Yep. Otherwise, you could just use an ampersand, and put gulp at the end.
Yeah, actually, yeah, not even ampersand, just spaces. Yo space, gulp space, pick Bauer space, angular space, and ad infinitum.
And it just stacks them all up, doesn't it?
It stacks them all up. It's just an npm-ish command text. So, by the way, Andrew Connell said if there's things to learn, probably npm is something that you guys will have to start learning how it actually works, because you'll find you're using it a lot.
Yeah. In fact, you guys are seeing me use Visual Studio Code or any of the other popular IDEs for client-side browsing, which is Atom and WebStorm. They're all virtual identical to each other. While that's happening, I'm going to go up here and get rid of that message. It's almost like you're taking a step back in time to Visual Studio 1.0, where you were doing a lot of commands in a terminal as well in conjunction with your Visual Studio. And then Visual Studio got smart, so you didn't have to. It looks like Yeoman Doctor is coming up, and we've got Yeoman installed. The next command I'm going to do is actually install the rest of the tool chain, the last element, which is npm install globally gulp, another tool. So we got one that actually helps us do our scaffolding, our building of the initial scaffolding of a project, Gulp is our build tool that lets us handle the rest of the tool, the rest of the process, where you're going to build, you're going to package, you're going to bundle, you're going to minify your code and get it ready for shipping. That's where Gulp actually steps in. And all we're doing, guys, is this. We've installed the JavaScript server upon which these tools run. We installed a code editor that has an integrated terminal. We're using the terminal to actually submit some commands to part of the runtime engine to install the remaining tools that use the JavaScript engine. And then we're going to be in a position where we can actually start running stuff. So at this point, we literally have everything installed that we need in order to be able to build solutions inside this environment. We got one more, sorry, I misspoke. We got one more thing that needs to be done. We have to install a generator, our first template right now. Because if we told Yeoman, go and scaffold out, go and create a project template, he would look and say, I got no templates. You got to give me at least one that I'm going to go get. So the next thing we're going to do is this one called npm install, and we're going to go get this particular web part template. So it's going to be npm install g, and then this is the format for getting something from Microsoft. Microsoft/generator. SharePoint. Let me double check my syntax one more time. Install G in Microsoft generator SharePoint. Looks like we got it, and this is going to go get that template. What's a template? It's a template that contains all the initial, what did I miss up? Install. Oh, I don't have a dash on the end. Install doesn't carry a dash. So you guys are literally seeing me do all the mistakes that everybody makes whenever they're actually interacting with a new IDE, a new tool chain. There are going to be times when you put a dash in, and keep in mind, I mean, this stuff only went 1.0 in February. It only hit 1.12 about 2 days ago. And I saw an update in the middle of while I was working and preparing for today's presentation. So now it's going to get that template. What have we got? We've got the runtime engine that understands JavaScript. We've got tools that we've installed that run based on JavaScript on top of that engine. We have an editor that's a free editor that dovetails nicely into all of this. The only thing that's left in the tool chain is that we need this generator, and the generator provides us with a scaffolded pre-configured project. And on top of it, it also provides us with what's called a workbench, an emulator for an actual SharePoint environment, so that whatever you create with this scaffolded solution can actually run, and it thinks it's in SharePoint. 12:39, Ralph, I'm running over. I hope that what's going to happen is that people are going to be willing to stay 5 minutes later. If we could ask.
It was pretty ambitious, you know, yeah, go for it.
But this is what we promised everybody, that we were going to step them through actually doing the install. At this time, while this is running, while this extraction and stuff is happening, I'm going to ask my teammates to submit a survey out to the rest of the team. What we want to try to understand is what kind of solutions people actually do build. So here, we've actually, we're at a position where we could start using this solution, and it's as easy as literally typing out the word yo. In fact, I got to back up just a little bit first. I've got to make a new directory. Now I can do that from inside here. I got to put a place to, I got to.
Let yo do it. Let yo do it. Let yo do it. Remember, create the directory. Let yo do it.
Oh, I kind of wanted to have everybody step through it really, really easy. Let's try this. What we're gonna do, guys, is actually make a new directory right at the root of your C drive. It's going to be called SPFX development. You're going to CD into it. Did I say I was going to deliberately make all of these mistakes? Now I'm inside here. I want to start a new project. This is just a generic place for all my solutions. I'm going to make another directory, and we're going to call it webpart 005A. And there's a reason why I'm picking that number, because I've already started a 5B project in case we get to this point where it takes 10 minutes. I'm going to CD into that. Ralph, you should be proud of me that I didn't actually expect I was going to generate this entire template and run the solution from there. And now I can actually just start Rio. So you're going to use the command line to actually build folders that you're going to use to store your solutions. Once you're inside your target where you're going to store your current solution, webpart 005, you just start the Yeoman tool and wait for it to actually come up with a little wizard that actually steps you through all of the things that you need. I'm going to step you through this, and then we're actually going to bail on this because it takes 10 minutes easily to generate the scaffolding, and there's no speeding it up that I could find. But we are going to step through the process where we fill in all of the wizard queries so that it can start generating. And then I'm going to jump into the next side of it. Let me tee that up while we're waiting so that it's ready to go.
Did you want me to launch the poll?
Yes, please.
Okay. The poll is open.
Okay.
What kind of SharePoint solutions do you have?
Okay. Back here, Yeoman is asking me, what do I want to do? I want to run a generator. He puts the cursor right on the only one that's available, the one for the SharePoint web part scaffolding. I hit enter. It says, what's your solution name? I'll take the default. It says, what folder do you want to use? I'm actually in the folder for storing that, the one I just created, so we'll use the current folder. I don't want to use a JavaScript framework at this time. If I did, I could choose React like Microsoft would want, and it'll scaffold out and include that as well. For now, it's none. It says, what is your web part name? It offers up hello world. We don't want that, so we'll call it webpart 005A. What's the description? Yeah, I'll take the description. And here's where it's actually going to chew for about 10 minutes, and there's no speeding it up. So we're going to say that we've installed the tool chain, we've installed, we've run the tool chain, we've installed the template, we've actually started a templated project, and it's actually going to be running for 10 minutes. There's nothing more we can do with this one, but what I can do is actually go to what a finished version looks like. Here is code, Visual Studio Code running on my laptop, where I've already started that very same project, only I called it 5B. And so imagine that you've actually finished that scaffolding, and now you actually have all of this different source code inside here. What I want to do is go to the integrated terminal, and this is a different environment now. I want to be straight with you guys. It's a different environment. It's only to save 10 minutes so that this code has already been generated, and what you want to do next is actually do a first test of this. We're going to say gulp serve. That's a command you send to gulp to start its own little browser, its own little server that's actually going to serve this solution out so we can see what it looks like. Then the next step is we're going to prepare this solution to actually be completely hosted by SharePoint itself, including the SharePoint library. So we're just waiting for gulp serve to actually finish getting ready to put a browser up here and load that content into the browser. It takes a couple of seconds like any other background service. It's going to be chewing a little bit before it gets ready. This would be a good time for people to actually answer the poll that we set out. It's just 2 questions that we're trying to ask to understand what kind of solutions people think they're going to have, what kind of organizations you guys have. Are you regional organizations, everybody's all in one region, or are you globally distributed where it might make sense for you to have a content delivery network? And I'm just curious to see out of the attendees. All right, we're watching the server start to come up that's actually going to serve all of this. And we see that there's actually a certificate problem because this thing's trying to load. It started a browser and it said, hey, there's something going on here. Your connection's not private. We don't have a certificate. We've got a solution for that. I'm going to go back here and cancel. Out of the first run here, we're going to go back to one little note, and we have the ability to actually generate a certificate on the fly. We're going to type in gulp trust dev cert, and it's going to generate and install a certificate right in my development environment. We're going to say gulp. I can't remember. Trust dev cert. When was it any easier to actually generate a certificate for your project, a local SSL certificate? And if you guys remember SSL certificates, what they really do is, number one, they identify that the people you're interacting with are actually who they say they are. The second part is that it actually encrypts the data as it moves back and forth during a request and during a response. You'll say, yes, I do want to install this. And now it's ready to go. If I go back and actually do gulp serve now, what should happen is the server is going to spin up, the server is going to have a certificate, my browser is going to open up, try to connect to that server, it's going to get a certificate, it'll be satisfied, it'll create an SSL connection to the server and begin to display this base web part with no changes in it whatsoever. And what I'm going to get, it popped up in another window here, what I'm going to get is this. This is actually a SharePoint workbench. It's hosted on port 4321, but if I want to see what the web part looks like, this is all that it looks like. I've got one web part. I can go and edit the properties on it. They're called reactive properties that if you see the prop updates in real time, that's what we're going to try to deploy out to the real world. So I'm going to close this. We're going to go back to my server. I'm going to say server, I want to Control-C to stop it. It's no longer there. The next thing I want to do is actually get this entire solution up and in my test environment, my real SharePoint environment. So what I'm going to do next is actually bring up a test environment here. I'm going to close everything except I'll go to a place called anyrobotics.sharepoint.com. This is my little dev environment for working on, anybody can have one, $5 per person per month, gets you, your basic SharePoint Office 365 environment. I'm going to log in. See if we can get in quickly. Doesn't remember my password. We're in. The next thing that we want to do, and I'll jump back into the presentation momentarily, we were right here where we set up the entire environment, including installing a generator. The next step is we wanted to create a directory, actually use Yo, follow the wizard, create the entire thing, the entire scaffolded solution. The next thing we're going to do is modify some of our deployment properties. We're going to package our solution. We're going to bundle parts of our solution. We're going to create a SharePoint library. We're going to move the static content up to the SharePoint library, but now our solution is going to be aware that that library is going to act as a mock content delivery network. That's what we're going to try to tackle next. So I'm going to go inside here to North American Robotics. We're going to create a new library called WebPart005 stuff. That's all that it's going to be. So I'm going to go in here to Site Contents. I need this to be created first because I need the URL to this library. And this is what I was trying to do a little bit differently than the literature, than the web part, than the YouTube videos, is to actually have all of this in one single lesson. We're going to call this WebPart005 static content. All it's going to do is create a standard library. It's going to create standard defaults. Since Mark Vought's using it, should be fine. But what I want to do is snatch this URL. We're going to grab this URL. We're going to copy it. I'm going to minimize this momentarily. We're going to find out where in this WebPart project we actually go to adjust stuff. Inside source and inside config are places where you can actually modify the manifest related parts of your solution. In particular, under config, under write manifest, there's actually a place for the content delivery network base path. And this is where I'm going to put This is where I'm actually going to put my URL. That's all that I really needed to do. Now I'm going to go and do a quick save. I'm going to go down in here to the parts manifest, and we're going to look inside. Let's see, where do I want to go? Package solution.json. I'm going to change this to version 1.0.0.1, and I don't think I really need to change anything else for this particular web part. I like everything else about it. So now this solution is aware that any static content, JavaScript files, JSON files, etc., are actually going to be delivered right from the SharePoint site where the rest of the web part is going to be hosted. What do I need to do next? I need to actually package the solution and bundle the solution. To do that, we're going to go in here into gulp, and we're going to type a gulp command that says gulp package solution. And to minimize everything, I can actually use the word ship, --ship. And it's actually going to create what's called an SPPKG file. Very much like a WSI file in the rest of the terminology. What did I get wrong here? You're unknown. Should have worked. Go package solution. Ralph, did you see anything? Did anybody see anything?
Just do a gulp --ship first and see what happens there.
Okay.
And you did a gulp serve on this guy already, right?
Pardon?
You did a gulp serve on this already, right? So you know it works.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
now that this happens, now do the package. There you go. Now do it. Gulp package -solution space --ship. Hit it.
Here we go. This is going to actually create the SPPKG file, everybody. Good catch, Ralph. Wow, I owe you 2 beers so far. Next thing we want to do is actually...
I'm upgrading that to a Knob Creek as soon as I get to my part, as someday.
You know, we're getting there. I'm going to do the same thing with bundling. What bundling is going to do is actually generate the JavaScript and JSON files that represent the static content that actually would go up to a CDN, or in this case, up to a SharePoint environment. And this is where we're kind of branching off from what Ralph is actually going to show, that these files are going to be hosted inside the SharePoint library instead of going up into a CDN. What we've got then is an SPKJV file that if I type in Explorer dot, what we'll actually get, that's a way of launching Windows Explorer. And it popped up in another window, but it looks like this. In WebPart 05, we have, under SharePoint, we have a solution folder, and that's our PKG file, SPPKG. Also, we have, under WebPart 5, we have, under temp, we have a deploy folder, and these are the actual elements that represent static content that are going to go up inside that library. I may as well leave that open right now because it's going to be put up inside this browser. I'm literally going to put it into this library. So now I've uploaded all of that static content to this library. The next thing I'm going to do is actually upload that SPPKG file into the app catalog that is a part of this particular development, this particular environment. And that's actually located under Sites App Catalog. So an app catalog is a site collection that's global across your entire web application, therefore all of your site collections. So you only have to actually upload an application one time here to this app catalog, and you've made it available across all the site collections inside your organization. It's as easy as hitting upload or even doing a drag and drop. I'll go through the upload process in this case. We're going to click the upload button, choose files. We're going to browse into that very directory I was working in, SPFX development, WebPart 005B, SharePoint, solution. Here's our PKG file made just literally minutes ago. We're going to upload that package. We're going to watch the rest of the screen here to make sure that it actually gets deployed off to the side here. We should get a dialog box saying, hey, some of your content is going to be served from the following domain. This is exactly the library I was looking for in aroboticsharepoint.com static content. I'll choose yes, go ahead and deploy it. And now I know I've successfully made a connection. But this solution, this instance of the solution, really knows it's getting static content from the library itself. That part being done, I can go back to North American Robotics, even back to the root level of the team site. So we can actually, I should be able to go up here and say, edit the page. And it's not web part 003. Let me get rid of that one. I was just from practicing and perfecting my steps last night. Nothing more than that.
Are you going to add the web part, or are you going to do the workbench on there?
Oh,
Don't you have to add the web part right, now that you deployed it?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, there's one step that Ralph is mentioning that we need to actually add the web part into our site contents gallery first. Let me go and hit save to get out of this. When you're on your site, where you want to use that particular solution, I need to go and add an app. And here I see web part 005 client-side solution is actually available to me. So this gallery is being delivered from the app catalog. I see it there. What I've done is actually add that web part in to my site contents of the site first. Now it's available for me to add onto the page of the website.
Give it a moment. It's actually deploying now.
Yeah.
What you didn't see over there is that it's actually installing. It may not be ready that very second.
Yep. And Ralph, thanks for bringing it up for everybody. We're all still learning this. It's a couple of months into, well, it's been a year, but we're still understanding some of the idiosyncrasies about interacting with these web parts delivered in this way. Let me go to edit page. And the way that we should be able to see it is that in my original configuration, I told it I want the web part to be available under a folder that's called under development. And here it is. And I still don't see web part 5 just yet. So we're still waiting on it to actually come in. That's where it would be. I would add it onto the page. It would all be completely working at that point. I don't want to sit and make everybody wait. What we end up seeing then is that you've inserted the web app and the content is all being delivered from SharePoint itself. Ralph, I've taken up way too much of the time, but I want to dovetail over to you. Feel free to take up as much time as you want and hope that people are willing to stay for 10 or 15 minutes late.
All right, I'll watch the numbers here, see how many drop off as soon as they hear me talking here.
Okay. Thanks, all.
Hold on. So share screens. I'm going to share monitor 2 and clean. Hopefully it'll start working.
Yes.
On pause.
It looks great.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hitting play. Is my screen showing? Can you see my windows over here? You see it says installation yarn and all that stuff?
Yes.
All right.
The cursor and everything.
All right, so before I start, let me go through some of the items, some nuances that you saw before that I just basically, as they say, held back for tools for later. All right, so the first one.
Hey, Ralph, can I squeeze one thing in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Web part 005B just showed up in my gallery, so it took about 2 minutes to start working. Back over to you, Ralph.
Okay, so a couple of things that are over here. All right, so basically you saw that the yo command that he used was writing, and he just typed in yo. What you probably didn't see is when he did yo, and I'll just give you what sample. He just went like this, and all of a sudden, it took a while to even start, really quick. Yeah. And there's a reason for that. It's because it's trying to do a lot of stuff. All right, and then over there, what you probably didn't see also is it had this hello and all this other stuff, and you can see I have other parts over here. Let me Control C out of that real quick and get it out. And you missed, of course, the actual yeoman, the British yeoman that it was trying to show over here. But best practices you're going to find out is you can shortcut that. So the way to really do it is to go yo at. Oh, let me go back a step up. Okay, it's basically yo at. You right away, I put in the generator, Microsoft. Remember that generator? Microsoft/SharePoint. Like this. All right, and then there's one other step. Thanks to Andrew Connell, who asked for this, demanded it, and got it. It's called skip install, because remember that it said he was going to take a long time. He had to skip to another machine.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have to wait a long time. We can quickly look at it. So we just do a -- skip install, and then just watch how fast this goes. All right. First.
And Ralph, what that's what we're going to do is that's actually going to skip all of the dependency installations, right?
Yep. What's called dependency is called the linking and all that other stuff that happens, and I'll explain that in just a moment.
Yeah.
I'm going to make another subfolder with the solution name, and you see over there no framework again. What's the name of the web part? I'm keeping it hello world. I'm just keeping everything. Boom, done. All right, and then the concept is to cd to that directory, and maybe the directory is cd/dev cd. What did I call it? Dev2. Yes, and then basically I do code dot. Another shortcut. I want Visual Studio Code to open up. Code dot. I can do explore dot. Boom. There's my stuff ready to go. All right. Just wanted to show you those quick key tricks. Now, another thing you're probably noticing is I'm not using the Visual Studio Code command line piece at all. I'm actually using I brought in like one of these little freebie command line pieces, and I'm not even using like regular command or PowerShell or anything like that. Part of it is because I want to be fast. I want to have color coding. I want it to look like the rest of the folks that are out there. The reason why I don't use that one is because I want to have many windows like I'm doing over here. So that as they say, choose your tools, choose your poison, however you like to do. So if I look different, it's only because that's what I chose to do. All right.
Yep.
All right. Couple other things. All right, on the tools over here. So the command line, just talked about that over here. If you remember earlier when we were choosing node and it was between LTS and the current version, it seems counterintuitive not to choose the current version. Well, here's the reason. It's because when they're actually doing all this development for their scaffolding and everything else, they're doing it on a version that's known to be supported. If you try current, which means it's going to have some new things in there, there is that little itty-bitty possibility that things will not work. All right, so rather than take that chance, just do always LTS. And every so often, you'll know that there's time to update. It knows itself. When you run NPM, it'll say, hey, there's a new version of the LTS. In fact, I'm going to go get it myself. The next time you run NPM, if it takes a long time to run, probably it's because it's getting an update to itself. All right, next one. On the case of the VM that he chose, you saw that he was using a Windows 2012 server VM. My suggestion is if you're going to do VME stuff, in fact, because you remember, you can do this now on the Mac, on Android, on Linux, you name it, whatever you want. My suggestion is to try maybe something smaller. You can, in fact, when I do my presentations or even when I do my my development for this kind of stuff, I just get the smallest Windows 10 VM that I can get from Azure, which is only like literally like $20 a month at most when I use it. And that goes against my MSDN credit. So that's what I'm doing. The server's a little bit bigger, a little more stuff, and also because when we're so used to the Windows 10 stuff, it's a little counterintuitive. That's why we were having issues going back and forth from stuff. So that's just a quick note on that.
Sure.
Another
and
one
Ralph,
over here. Yeah, go ahead.
You were saying your MSDN subscription probably gets you what, $100 Microsoft dollars a month, so that $20 for your virtual machine is kind of a wash. It's basically free, right?
So it's here how it goes. If you have Visual Studio Professional, you get $50 a month Azure credits. If you have Enterprise, you get $150 a month Azure credits. Your mileage may vary depending on what you're doing up there on Azure. The less you do, of course, the more you get. All right. Other things that we didn't talk about. Another tool that's not here because we didn't really cover it is Git. Git is that new TFSE freebie version that's out there. If you go and get Git, not to be punny, when you go and get it, basically it'll give you like essentially Linux tools. So look at this. I can do an LS, which is like a Unix type Linux type command style. It gives you that as well, and it gives you all the way to go up and get all those fun like freebie samples that are out there. And there's no more. Forget Codeplex is gone. That's all gone now. I'm sorry. Am I Codeplex? You're in Git now. You go to GitHub to get your stuff. Yep. Right. If you want to play with all that stuff, you need Git. So that's important. But we can cover that in a different session. The next thing I do is, you remember I made a very quickie way of bringing up Yo. That means if I did Yo, if I want to make this work, I have to go and do an npm install to actually get my pieces to work. Well, but that takes a very long time to run. So I actually went out and got a tool, according to Andrew Connell on voitanos.io, this program called Yarn. And here's the link over here, yarnpkg.com yarn/en/docs/install. I brought this in, and what Yarn does is it makes a cache of whatever you're getting, because otherwise every single time I need to build or make a connection for this stuff, it has to go up online, because that's what it does each and every time. Unlike before, when we make Visual Studio packages, it just simply brings everything up that's there. This actually has to go online and get the latest of whatever it is. So if I type yarn, I can just type yarn install, just like before. And then of course they have one problem. I have to go ignore dash platform because there is a bug. But anyway, I do that, for example, and it runs essentially that install very, very fast, because I've done it before, and it's very, very fast for me to get it. So instead of NPM. So just so you know, in case you hear about that, that'll like save literally half your time in building these packages. So that's my note on that too.
Okay. That's finally, a good tip, Ralph.
You're right. And finally, on the cert, there's part of the reason for the cert. By the way, and every so often you may have to do, let's see if I still have this up here. Part of the reason why you may have to do this, why you have to do the cert. And by the way, here's a command, by the way, that you're probably going to want to be familiar with, which is dash tasks. And it only happens in the directory where you created. Oh, I didn't find gulp. Oh, hey, check it out. Remember I didn't run npm install, so gulp is not there. It's not ready to go. So let me go cd to my original place where I was. And I'm going to go gulp dash tasks over here. And this is a very important command, because look, now you'll see what gulp commands are available to you. And the reason why you have to run this is because guess what? Their tasks are mostly hidden. They've actually built it into their code. The scaffolding, and the reason why we do it is because Microsoft knows exactly what you need to make a web part. Sure, you can have a blank project. If you have to build it from scratch, believe me, it's a lot of work. Massive amounts of stuff. Never try to do it. Let them do it, because they know all the parts that are there. It's very easy to miss something. All right. Now, and look, I want you to notice this one when I typed it in. I have a untrust dev cert, because guess what? Every so often, stuff changes, and you have to. There will be a change. In fact, one happened recently where Microsoft basically changed the way things were going on. It told you needed to untrust this in order to make it work. So you'll find yourself having to do that. But another reason why you have to trust the dev cert is if you want to deploy to SharePoint Online, if you do not run this, guess what? It will not work there, period. I don't have to trust dev cert to make it work on my local machine, because I'll just get an error that says, hey, there's no certificate, or I don't know what this is. Then you'll get the error. You say, okay, fine. I still want to see it. You're okay. But if you want to do this in SharePoint Online, you must have a cert. Otherwise, it won't work. All right. So that's the other note over here. So other things that were done over here. So you saw that when he installed, and in fact, I'll show you some of that. Some of the things, some of the other small things over here. The app catalog. The app catalog wasn't there by magic. The app catalog, if it's not there, chances are, especially if you're setting this up from scratch, probably does not exist. Right? And in fact, you're just like, oh, let me go to the app catalog. How come there's no app catalog site collection? Because actually, you have to create it. If you don't have it, you actually have to create it. You have to go into your admin center of Office 365, go into SharePoint, and then when you're in SharePoint, you will get, of course, your admin area, and then you'll have your apps area here. If you don't have this set up, all right, you're going to, if you click on this, for example, if I click on this right now, it's going to take me straight to the area, but I would have gotten the message that says, you don't have an app store. Would you, an app catalog, would you like one? And then you create one as if you're creating a regular site collection. And you can see I have over here, there's my site collection for apps. It's not called app catalog. In my case, it's called MMO apps, right? So there's my, oops, did I change something? I hope I didn't. But anyway, so that's where my app store is right now, in the place over here. And so the app catalog is important. If you don't have it, you can't deploy anything.
Yeah. Right. Hey, Ralph, you still got 11 people attending, so you have a completely captive audience right now. Go, go, go. You're doing great.
All right, let's keep this recording going. And remember, you can always slow this down later or speed it up, whichever you want to do. If you want to hear the chipmunks go, we can go. Let's see. All right, so other things that are important. And you saw that he deployed directly to a library. All right. Technically speaking, the videos that were showing out there did not show that, and there's a reason why they didn't show it. Firstly, initially, it didn't work at all. If you had tried to do this a few months ago, and when they first came out with it, it would have failed completely. It would have gotten mad. All right, and part of it is because there's this concept of what's called the referrer. The referrer says that if you're trying to run me, WebPart, that's a SharePoint thing that has all the Microsoft bits, if you're calling me from someplace, somewhere else, like a web app that's built on a web server somewhere else, you don't have any of the things that I'm looking for that tell me you're coming from a place that I can trust. I will just fail. So they originally had that fail. Then they made it like, we because these things might now exist in SharePoint, because initially they didn't. You actually had to do an Azure CDN. Then it said, now you're okay. Now you're okay to do it. So that seemed to work. Now here's the thing, and even today I had it confirmed because I was at the meeting with the engineers at their bi-weekly meeting with the SIG folks, Vesa Juvenen and all the other folks. The reason why they have a CDN, there's several reasons. One is the caching, right? There is caching with that, and there's geolocation. If you have a SharePoint online site, this site is probably regional, all right? Your site will be like you're in North America, you're in Central area, whatever else, all right? But all these other pieces, like you see all this UX for the for SharePoint, everything that you see over here, except maybe your logo, except maybe your content, all that stuff is geolocated, which means that Microsoft takes care of using Akamai and all the rest to make those really fast for you. If you use the CDN that they just created, in other words, and by the way, here's the PowerShell to set that up. So for example, if let me connect to this service over here real quick, and I'm just doing the PowerShell to the area. Let me go there. Jojen, 1 second, at .onmicrosoft.com. Let me put in the new password. I made a mistake with the password again. 1 second.
Sure.
That's why. I have to look what I'm doing because I have two screens over here.
You and me both. We're both trying to type so fast. You're invariably going to have a little typos here and there. You still got a lot of people on watching, so they're
okay. Why can't I connect to it? Well, actually, so not sure exactly why it won't let me connect, but I want to show you because I've already used this system before in several items over here. Here's some of the commands that you will have to be familiar with. Here's the thing. Again, the CDN, it's called the Office 365 CDN. It's a service specifically for SharePoint Online, not for other CDNs. It's not for you to make your own CDN and use it for your web apps. It only works for SharePoint Online and probably eventually for SharePoint on premises. All right, and the concept over here is and you can see over here, you have to actually create. Your CDN, either public or private. And the concept of public means that anyone on the tenant will be able to look at stuff. And of course, you can point it to a specific library anywhere in your SharePoint, or you can say all site assets folders in all these areas are now valid places for me to drop in a CDN, anything like that. And again, the concept is you're getting an enterprise ready and an available area for it. It is considered best practice to use that kind of CDN, not put it into a library. Put a library if you want to do a quick dev. If you want to make something work for just that site, you're okay. But if you're doing it for real, you're going quote unquote production. If you're going production, you must use the CDN. Now, that being said, the original Azure CDN, which is what I used to do over here, works. Here's my Azure site. Yes? You see my Azure site?
The commands, go back to your terminal window again. Those are commandlets. Those are PowerShell commandlets that are being executed, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Just wanted to clarify that.
You see over here, look, it's the SharePoint Online Management Shell. They tell you to go get this because it has these commands ready to go. You don't have to think about it. You can just type them up.
Oh, fantastic. All right, back to what you were working on.
Yeah, there's links on those. In my case, all right, so before they announced the Office 365 CDN, I followed their instructions and I created my own CDN over here in Azure. So I have that set up. So let's take a quick look at that. This is basically what it looks like. It's basically over here, and it's just a little blob. And you can see that it's basically an endpoint that's on there that you can see it's using a particular resource group and everything else. And what it gave me was this little thing, basically called access keys. All right, and hopefully it doesn't show me. Yeah, it goes dot dot dot. You don't see it all, but it gives you access keys again because it's all locked down. And basically they're in their environment. And let's go back again to that that task center over here. You see they actually have a deploy Azure storage because there's a deployment that actually takes you straight to Azure storage. You saw that, remember he dragged and dropped or he was able to upload his files directly? Well, in the gulp task, there is a step to actually put it up onto Azure storage. And that's how we did it. All right.
And so that's how your static content goes up into the content delivery network. This is that one command. Wonderful.
Correct.
Hey,
all
Ralph,
right. So,
what are you seeing for costs for a content delivery network? Does Microsoft, are they giving away some of this, or is it paying right from the get-go?
I'm glad you asked that question. But so let's take a look. Take a look over here what I have on my dashboard. Look how much I've used so far. I have $150 credit, and where am I at? I'm at $124 remaining. And now, how far are we in the month? We're quite deep in the month. We're talking pennies on pennies. Here, there's my storage area that I created for the CDN. That's how much I used in the last month. $1.05. Okay.
Sounds
Does
pretty
that
good.
underscore the point how cheap this is?
It sounds like there's no downside to wanting to go with the content delivery network. You just have to step yourself through setting it up the first time and get used to using it.
Oh, so here's the interesting thing. The Office 365 CDN, now here's another plus for that. That's zero cost. You're already paying for your Azure. I mean, for your SharePoint, your Office 365, I should say. It's included. So even that $1.05, I'm going to save that money as soon as I start putting this stuff onto SharePoint. However, if I put it here in Azure, I could use it for other things, right? So let's say, for example, I put in images, CSS, and everything else, and I want other things to use it in other web apps. Maybe I want a branding. Maybe I have JavaScript that everyone gets to use and everything else. Aha, I can use this, and I can share it with SharePoint, and I can share it with other web apps.
So it sounds like for everybody that's still on, you've got a couple of options. The short, cheap option is that, sure, put it up inside the library. But like Ralph was even saying, we're in complete agreement. When you start building production-level solutions, Microsoft has set the stage very nicely for us to start consuming the content delivery network. It takes a while, like any other CDN. They've tried to streamline it as much as possible. But once it's there, it becomes your go-to way of delivering all of that static content that sometimes affects the initial delivery of your product, your solution by seconds or even tens of seconds. Who knows?
Definitely. Okay, so let's go through a couple of quick things and I'll be done over here. So there's my storage up here in config file, and you can see over here I have what it says essentially my account, my CDN account, and my container and my access key. But this is only for Azure. Only Azure has this. Otherwise, it was that case of the manifest where it says, where is it? Where is your stuff? And that could have been SharePoint. That could have been wherever. Here it is. All right.
So it could have been Akamai. It could have been
Akamai. Well, actually, oddly enough, when you set up a CDN over here, you have a choice of Verizon or Akamai. Go figure. And by the way, they revealed, unbeknownst to they were not supposed to do it, but they revealed that Akamai is their CDN for Office 365, not Verizon. Go figure.
Oh, okay.
All right, just saying that's what's going on. So anyways, other things that are over here, let me quickly go through some of these files that are out here. Out files over here. By the way, when you open your project, you want to like explore everything. There's nothing going to hurt because remember, you can always redo it. Things like what's happening over here. All right, where are these files going? The distribution that you saw, that dist folder, never touch it because that's the stuff that's created. Lib folder, again, remember, it's like a bin file, right? Stuff is created there. You don't have to touch that.
Yeah.
All your work is happening here under source, all right? So I'm going to show you some important pieces that you need to know about and you need to make sure that you're aware of. Over here, there's localization. Right now, they force you to do localization, all right? Which means you're always at the very least going to make your English versions of everything. All right.
Sure.
My suggestion is to look at this and just be aware that if you make a change, in other words, you add new properties. And by the way, over here, as you can see, I have a web part where I made my own properties. I created properties and I made my own essentially string versions of those. I didn't have to do that, but because I did that, now I have a localized part. If I didn't do that, then I'll have all kinds of weird errors that say, oh, you didn't localize. So it's going to work, but it's going to suck. All right, other things. And of course, here's the core. The core one is this webparts.ts file is the core And by the way, it's all TypeScript. If you're thinking about what you need to learn besides JavaScript, actually you need to learn, if you're going to do this kind of development, TypeScript, TypeScript, TypeScript. Go into learn whatever you can about TypeScript if you're going to be doing development. This is going to be the de facto way of really doing this kind of work. All right. Real quickly now on this particular area in my manifest over here, I can set default properties. I over here, I have my description, I have a title, I have defaults. I can do, you saw my version control, I could do that there as well. They're using for CSS. By the way, and the CSS is another important thing. You can't just like make your thing and just say, oh, I just want to use my style that I made up CSS. No, you can't just do it. You got to put it in here in an actual CSS file like this. Because guess what? TypeScript will, following a thing, create a version of that. So as you can see, for example, I created my own CSS for an item called header text, and it created a special version of that. Mainly, and the reason for that is, have you ever done this in SharePoint? Created your own like style entry, and all of a sudden it doesn't work because maybe SharePoint's probably using it, or SharePoint doesn't like what you're using and is overriding what the heck you're doing. This is the way that you do stuff without stomping on it. All right? All right, I'm showing you all the parts. I'm just going to show you a live part. And the reason why I did this part, the only reason why I did this was because, as you can see in the site, all right, there's that header that's over here. So the client that I had didn't like that header. He just hated it. All right, and he said, I want a new header over here. So let me go over here to my pages, and what I did was.
And really, Ralph,
yep.
Ralph, the solution you're describing is actually a solution that overrides that header. It's not a solution that's a web part. It's a solution that, when it's in place, overrides the existing header, right?
Well, let's see. So one of the things that I could have done was in the original pieces over here, I could have done this. I could have gone F12 and in Chrome. By the way, there's and we'll cover this in another session. There is a SharePoint editor thing. See this save to SharePoint? So I can go over here. I can go into files of my site. Oops, that's not going to work from there because I'm in a, oh, there we go. All right, so look, I can go into style library, and I can actually create my own JS files and do all kinds of cool things that I want to do. All right, but that's called JS Link, and people might be familiar with that as a way of like overriding SharePoint stuff. Well, that only works in Classic Pages right now. So it's about to, and by the way, and as we speak, Microsoft fixed it, and now it works in the others. So, but anyways, at the time it didn't work. I could not change that header in the so-called modern page is what they were using, and this is our modern page. So I had to create a web part that did it. So all I did now is I go into edit mode of a modern page. Oops, I got to go to edit mode. Here we go. Now I'm going to do plus to bring in my web part, and there's my ATI page header that I did over here, and poof, it brought it up right away. Look, it's blank. There's nothing in it. If I go into my edit, there it is. That's remember those properties you saw earlier? There it is. So I can change where these are coming from. All right, and then that's all it did.
So let me get this right. Your web part is really just a solution that's kind of cast as a web part that doesn't have an actual visual interface. Instead, it's got additional functionality that overrides what's on the page.
Yes, and so I'll show you that really quick because it's a very interesting. And by the way, if somebody knows how to do this in non-jQuery, because I would have had to bring jQuery, which is so heavy, just to do this crazy thing, which is I had to find freaking MS site header and then with border and change it. That's all I wanted to do. But I had to do all this. Why? I know there's got to be a way. But anyways, still, I made it work, and there it is. Right?
Got it.
So that's and literally, of course, what did I have to do? I had to bring it to the header, and I know it's running properly because I'm not doing gulp serve anywhere where it's running locally on the system. All right.
So really what happened was you're using that web part kind of like people in the past have used a content editor web part or a script editor web part as a mechanism for injecting functionality into the page inside Office 365. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
Yeah. Which is why now if everybody was wondering, hey, why is there only one generator for all of SharePoint? It's just a web part. It's because you can do so much. Ralph has just showed us what else you can do with what you think is a web part, some little visual component that sits on a page. In fact, it can have no interface whatsoever and still do amazing things to your page. It all uses the same template.
Yeah, you saw earlier there was a hello world, but all I did was I just went into this little piece of command, and here's the key. this one over here, the very important thing, which is the render command over here. You'll find, when you start learning about this more, you'll see that there's essentially a class. Oh, by the way, that's why you need TypeScript, so you can do this class. They'll say you have class with TypeScript. I have a render method, and that render method is where everything happens. So all I did was, in this particular case, was I removed their little insert HTML, and I put my thing, or rather my insert HTML, their HTML renderer, which is down over here. Oh no, it's gone. I took it out. It's gone. They had basically a DOM element inner HTML where they did the hello world web part. Well, I removed that and I put in my own thing. And my own thing was do this during render. Do this, which is basically run these pieces.
And that's actually a common step for people that are going to be developing SPFX solutions. You're going to be diving right into the class that represents the web part. You're going to be diving into the render method. You're going to be tearing out the auto-generated guts, and you're going to be putting in your own functionality.
Right.
Okay. So the end result was you ended up with a web part that didn't necessarily have its own UI, but was able to actually take control of the page and override some of the functionality that might have been much more difficult to accomplish in any other mechanism. And you've done it all with Microsoft's newest approved SPFX.
Right.
In the interest of time, we're at 1:26. Let's see if we can try to wrap up in the next couple of minutes. How's that?
Okay. Well, yes. Actually, this is it. No, actually, I'm done. You're seeing everything in there. What I didn't do is I didn't actually run the commands. You could see me just go ahead and basically do a gulp deploy, gulp this. It doesn't make a difference. If you have it correct, it's going to run. That's all you need to know at this point. You've seen it already running on his demo. So on my demo, but this one is over here. This is fine. All right.
So what we've seen today, everybody that's still on, and for people that are watching this as a recording, you've seen a couple of different approaches to generating projects in the new SharePoint framework. They may manifest as web parts. They may momentarily or temporarily serve all of their static content up in a SharePoint library and ultimately make their way to where that content is being stored in the content delivery network. We found out that configuring and standing up a CDN is not necessarily a big deal. It's not trivial, but it's a very doable thing inside the Azure CDN. Microsoft is going out of their way to not only make it straightforward, but to make it brutally affordable on the order of pennies per day. $1 a month is what we were seeing even from Ralph. We saw that those web parts can perform visual type of functionality inside a SharePoint web page, or they can even do non-visual stuff like overriding current existing out-of-the-box functionality. Ralph, fantastic demo. Thanks for the impromptu. Thanks for sticking around with the extra time. I really appreciate it.
By the way, remember that error that I had where I couldn't connect? It's because I was pointing at the wrong place. That happens at your admin site. See that where I said Magenic Dojo -admin? Because look what it said. The current site is not a tenant administration site. So just keep in mind when you're doing these apps, these are tenant-wide apps, right? And this is the reason why certain things don't work. You have to trust things at a certain level. So that's why we can't do things like the way we used to, because of now we're talking about tenants, which don't exist in on-prem SharePoint.
So the minute you ran the connect SPO service commandlet against the proper host name, the admin host name inside your tenanted site, everything was working.
I'll find out in just a bit. while you're talking, I'm just going ahead and logging in just so I can make sure that I'm not crazy.
Yeah,
there it is. Look, see, it worked.
There it is. That's what we wanted to see, and that's the purpose of a user session. Is that we're taking time out. There's going to be a few mistakes made here and there, but everybody's going to learn, and hopefully that's the big takeaway. We still got 7 people online here. Ralph, fantastic. I'm going to dovetail back over to me. We're going to hit the last couple of slides, call it a day, and be able to hit the stop button on the record, okay?
All righty, got it. So you just, by the way, last thing we saw before you're switching your screens, go ahead and switch screens as we're doing this. Last thing you saw was me basically getting the SPO tenant CDN enabled status, whether it was true or false. In my case, it's true, which means I'm ready to go.
Yeah, fantastic. Elizabeth, can you hand control back over to me? There we go. All right, we're going to take control back over momentarily. Going back to screen number 3. what I wanted to share with everybody was, yes, indeed, even a minute after Ralph got started, web part 05B did show up inside the gallery. And when you finish hitting add, you end up with the web part being served there. So you've got a couple of different mechanisms for being able to experiment with the full life cycle of getting a web part, in this case a visual one, up inside your SharePoint environment, and then later, when you're ready for it, you can get it up into CDN and you'll have a complete end-to-end solution. Let's take a look at the last couple of slides here. What we ended up with for building the web part was this checklist, and these slides will be available on the Meetup site in order to help you through if you wanted to step through this in your own time. Other stuff you would want to do on your web part is configuring the CDN like Ralph showed us, adding additional web part properties, actually adding the code to begin interacting with the SharePoint context. You will see more of this in upcoming sessions. There's only so much you can cram into an hour. It overflowed wonderfully today, and I'm glad that other people stayed on. Here's some other little tips and commands. We'll share more of those on the Meetup site as well. Those are the references that were used on this one. To finally wrap up, there are times when a CDN hosted static content may actually be unnecessary, and locally hosted static content makes sense for small point solutions, doing stuff that's just temporary, not production ready. On the Ralph side of the counterpoint, there are times when CDN hosted static content does make better sense. It certainly is absolutely where Microsoft wants us to be right from the get-go. As soon as you feel comfortable getting used to putting stuff in the CDN, that's where Microsoft wants it. And there are very good reasons for it. Upshot, there's no single answer that covers every single situation. We didn't get to BYOP. We knew that was happening. Our tentative agenda for the next session in June is going to be continued work in this SharePoint framework, extending today's stuff, but at least we got everybody installed. We got everybody ready with the new tool chain. Next month is going to be Power Apps and the SharePoint framework. Thanks everybody for staying on as long as you did. Really appreciate it, and we all got to run. Thanks.